Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have a special guest from San Francisco, the founder and artistic director of Kronos Quartet, David Harrington. Welcome to Off the Podium.
Thank you.
The first thing that I saw and that really inspired me and interested me, because I work with a lot of youth orchestras, I conduct a lot of youth orchestras, is your new project, which is 50 for the Future. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, 50 for the Future is a large idea that has been many years in arriving. And it's a large idea that's very simple as well. And over 5 years, we're commissioning 25 women composers, 25 men composers to write new pieces for Kronos that we would wish to play on any stage in the world. And so, as I was saying, 25 women composers, 25 men composers that Kronos would want to play on any stage in the world. And our idea is that we want to make these 50 pieces a mosaic of creativity in our time and basically reveal possibilities about our medium. And we want to share this music with other groups, particularly very young groups.
Yeah.
And to do that, what we're offering is that the scores and the parts will be available, and 15 of these pieces are available right now.
Yeah.
On our website. They can be downloaded for free, and additionally you can hear Kronos recordings of each of the pieces, and there are a lot of extra materials like interviews with each of the composers, and in some cases videos of how to do certain of the techniques. And so far we've played these 15 pieces on many of our concerts all over. And at the moment, groups from 60 different countries have downloaded these scores and parts so far. And over 4,000 times. So it's just beginning to take off a little bit. And we're hoping that there will be courses in high schools and conservatories and universities where chamber music teachers and coaches take up these pieces in a formal way. And right now, as a matter of fact, next week in Canada, we're listening to a young group play some of the pieces, and the following week we're working with a group here in San Francisco, several groups in San Francisco. And it's a tremendous source of energy, inspiration, and positive vibes for Kronos. And we're just very, very happy with how this is going.
Yeah. You know, it's great to see that a world-renowned quartet with such a long history care about music education. I wish there were more organizations that felt this way. What was the inspiration? What was the idea behind creating a project like this for the future generations?
Well, there's several things that happened kind of simultaneously. One was that we found that groups were having a lot of trouble getting hold of our music. And no matter what it was, it could be Henryk Górecki, it could be Terry Riley, it could be Steve Reich, Fungi Salizadeh, it could be any number of people. It was just hard to get the music. And I recall when I was 12 years old, and I first heard a string quartet, and the piece I heard was Beethoven's Opus 127. And I was able to go to the Seattle Public Library, check out the score and the parts, and call up 3 friends, and a couple days later we were playing the piece.
Wow.
And so I was thinking, that's not possible for any group in the world that I know of, to be able to go to a library, check out one of the pieces Kronos has commissioned, and get a group together and play it.
Yeah.
How can we solve that problem?
Yeah.
So 50 for the Future is our attempt to solve that problem and make our music available 24 hours a day worldwide. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is that men and women are just writing such fabulous music for us right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I just moments ago was planning a world premiere of music by Islam Chipsy from Egypt. Mm-hmm. And when groups find out about this piece, they're going to go nuts. Wow. It's so great and fun and invigorating. And I can say that about all of the music so far. It's really going to make the world that Kronos has been a part of and what we've tried to do for these years, it's going to make it available for other people to jump in and go for it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one thing that's been difficult, as you said, about for the youth or for young professionals to have access to some of this music, because it can be expensive. I mean, you could get some of those composers' pieces, but it's large rental fees, and and it's just hard to get. And so this is definitely a very forward-looking project and a very much needed project for the world of music in general. So I'm even thinking I might get some of those quartets and have my youth orchestra play it, even though it's for a quartet. My string orchestra play it.
Well, you can't. Yes, you should do that. And as a matter of fact, the School of the Arts here in San Francisco, there's going to be a 60-piece string orchestra playing Fode Lasana Diabate's piece, wow. the Malian composer. We're going to do that with a 60-piece orchestra. We're going to play some of the solo lines, and the group is going to play some of the other lines. And yes, this is happening. And we've done Wuman's piece with 3 other quartets at the same time. And things like that. The music is very adaptable, and that's one of the points. Is I encourage people to. Well, here's another thing. A saxophone quartet in the Netherlands did Fode Lasana Diabate's piece. Wow. It was really good. It sounded great on a saxophone quartet.
Wow. One thing that I heard you talk about a little bit in one of your other interviews was improvisation. And one thing that I've been frustrated with, going to colleges myself and just seeing the programs in colleges, is the lack of improvisation and or at least encouragement of improvisation. You don't even have to teach it, but at least encourage the students. Is there any improvisation in any of the 15 or so works that currently have been composed for Kronos, the 50 for the Future project, that include improvisation?
Yes, there is. I mean, so far it's somewhat limited on the improvisation aspect, but as we move forward, there will be more of that. We have these 50 opportunities to create this mosaic, and there has to be that element of improvisation that will give each player in a quartet kind of a chance to explore themselves and take a chance and dive in somewhere they haven't, a pool that they haven't dived into before.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've talked about this many times, and I've heard some of your answers. But for new listeners or young musicians, how did you have the vision for Kronos Quartet in general when you were starting out, and also what led you to get to that point of creating this quartet? I know Black Angels had a lot to do with it, but what else inspired you other than Black Angels, maybe?
Well, I mean, you have to remember that in 1973, our society, our American society, was very fractured. Mm-hmm. It was not unlike it is now. Mm-hmm. Actually, the American war in Vietnam tore our society apart, and that's what I was growing up into. And I had, it was tough as a teenager, early 20s, to know what to do, and the idea of being a musician in this kind of place that felt like it was sort of falling apart. And in that sense, it's very similar to what's going on right now. And so I needed to find music that felt really personal and very strong. And when I heard Black Angels, I knew I have to play that piece.
Yeah.
And again, what I did is, in this case, I called up the publisher and I bought a score. And a few days later, it arrived in a tube. And I opened it up. It was this huge score. I'd never seen a score as big as that. And I was looking through it, and I realized, okay, in order to play this piece, I'm going to have to get a group that will really devote time, energy, all kinds of things to making this sort of experience happen.
Yeah.
And so that was the initial idea, was to play Black Angels.
Yeah.
But in order to be able to play Black Angels, there was all sorts of other things we needed to play first. And so we started with Webern and Bartok and my friend Ken Benchoff and all sorts of music.
Yeah.
And slowly over the period of that first year, we were ready to play Black Angels, and we did it. And by then, having this quartet rehearsing every day, it just felt so wonderful and natural.
Yeah.
And I realized this is what I'm doing no matter what. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And, I feel like I've been really lucky over these years to have such wonderful partners. And, for me to work every day with John and Hank and Sonny is just one of the most amazing thrills and experiences I've ever had. And I feel like our rehearsals are getting better. The music that's being written for Kronos is getting more vast in its reach. And the kinds of adventures that we're able to be a part of are getting more and more exciting, and I don't know, I'm on the edge of my chair even more than ever right now.
Well, I was going to ask about 800 or 900 both compositions, premieres, and new pieces and arrangements for Kronos. Uncertainty, are you not afraid of the unknown?
Well, I mean, anytime we do a new piece, and a little bit later this morning, I'm going to a rehearsal of a piece that we're premiering on Saturday night. There is always, every new piece we've ever done, every new arrangement we've ever done, I've had to overcome uncertainty. I've had to, can we do this? Is this going to work? Can I make a sound that is the right kind of sound for this music? Can I teach my body how to do this? There's always those moments of uncertainty, and you have to plow through it.
Yeah. What do you think when I say tradition or folk music, or both?
Tradition or folk music?
Or both. What do you think about it?
Yeah, people are asking me a lot about that these days. People must think I'm an expert on it. I don't feel like an expert on anything.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, for me, music is a big, beautiful, fabulous human mystery.
Yeah.
And Henryk Górecki, the very last time I ever spoke with Henryk, he said, I hope one day I will understand how music works. Yeah. And, I was just thinking about that. If anybody would understand how music works, it would be Henryk. And I have to say that I find it very mysterious. It's this human, beautiful human substance. It's the result of this friction between us and the world. It's music is so many things, and that for me, tradition, I guess I think of tradition as almost like a filtering process.
Uh-huh.
You know, so if we think of the tradition of the string quartet, for example, I immediately go to the foundation, and I think of Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven and Schubert.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where I started my listening. Mm-hmm. You know, I was lucky. I mean, the first quartet piece was one of the greatest ones ever written, Opus 127 of Beethoven.
Yeah.
And the more I explored that 75 years of music that happened, this incredible blossoming of creativity that happened through the string quartet, I value that foundation that those four guys, white guys, I think they were all of the same religion. They probably spoke the same language, and they created this foundation. And what I've wanted to do is take the power of that and extend it out to the rest of the world and bring more languages, more cultures, more religions, more viewpoints into this art form and make it something that can celebrate humanity.
This is going back a little bit, but you know, one of the inspiring projects for me that Kronos did, well, I didn't know about Kronos actually back in 1992, but when I went back and I've been a longtime fan, is Pieces of Africa. And later when I heard you talk about that CD and just getting out there and trying to find composers from that region was very inspiring. You want to tell me how you came to realizing that you need to reach out to that part of the world?
Well, that goes back to my high school days because at Roosevelt High School in Seattle, Washington, my high school music teacher, and by the way, everybody needs a Mr. Taylor. Ronald Taylor was my high school music teacher. Every kid in the universe needs a Mr. Taylor in their life.
Yeah.
And most people don't get one.
Yeah.
And I am really, really lucky. Well, Mr. Taylor had a fabulous record collection for us to listen to. And some of the music that I was able to hear when I was in high school was from Ghana and other places in Africa. And one of the things that I noticed was there's a certain kind of feeling and a certain kind of sound, and it's not in any other music that I was aware of. And I thought to myself, someday I want my violin to be able to sound like some of these things I was hearing in the music room at Roosevelt High School. And it took until 1984 before Kronos had one piece written for us by a composer born in Africa. And then it took another 8 years to piece the entire album together. So it didn't start out as an album, it started out as one piece, but even before that, it started out as a desire to be able to make a certain kind of sound.
I want to know, you've had all these experiences, and I actually came to one of your most memorable concerts for me was, I think it was 2007 in Miami, and I saw Kronos. Or maybe it was 2006 or 7 in Miami when you played there. I saw, and it was an absolutely memorable experience. And you had all kinds of things on stage, some hammers and all kinds of stuff. I still want to know what that last piece was on that concert. You probably wouldn't remember, but it had a lot of hammers and saws and whatever. It was insanity on stage, and I don't remember what piece that was. Do you recall what piece you played that included all those equipment?
Yes, I mean that was the it was a project that we call Awakening, and that was premiered on September 11th, 2006. So it was the 5th anniversary of the attacks.
Yeah.
And we were invited to perform at the Herbst Theater in San Francisco, and initially it was just the date of the concert, and then I realized, well, look, that's the 5th anniversary of this. And so it seemed to me that Kronos needed to do something different on that night, and that became what we call Awakening. And so there was music from many different parts of the world that started. The part 2 was more or less the attack itself, and the piece you're talking about was from Einstürzende Neubauten, the German group, and we did a version of one of their pieces. And then part 3 was what music can do about it. And I'm pretty sure it might be that we played only part of that entire work, Awakening, and I don't remember for sure, but that's what I think that's what you're talking about.
That's the one. Speaking about all those experiences, there must be some interesting moments that have happened. If you have all kinds of equipment, maybe mics and just new pieces, or a lot of new music, there must be some moments where things fell apart or things didn't go as planned. Any of those moments that come to mind at this moment?
Well, I can tell you about the most recent one. The other night, for the 4th and final performance of Milai, which it's a monodrama written for Kronos and Van An Vo, who plays traditional Vietnamese instruments, and then the tenor, Rindy Eckert. And Milai is about one man and his two. He was a helicopter pilot, and his 2 gunners, what they did about when they saw what was happening in Milai nearly 50 years ago. And Hugh Thompson, the character that Rindy is portraying, is on his deathbed. He's got cancer, and he's reliving the horror of the Milai massacre. And so here we are. Jonathan Berger wrote the music, and at a certain point, my music light, we're about 1/3 of the way through the piece, and it's very complex, and I have to give a lot of cues and all that. So my music light burned out.
Wow.
So basically, I'm in the dark, and I'm trying to play this really complex music. So I thought, what am I going to do? And so I just got closer and closer to the notated music and got more and more confident, even though I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, and I went for it, and it all worked out.
Wow.
And eventually some of the light came back on. So these things happen. You kind of have to be ready. Live performance is... It has those kinds of challenges. No matter what, you can practice all day and all night and for months, and when you go out in front of an audience, you never quite know what's going to happen.
Well, a couple of more questions. Advice to young musicians, aspiring artists who are inspired by the work that you do and the Kronos. What advice would you give them?
I think that everybody ought to keep their ears open. They ought to evaluate what they hear. It's a really good idea to allow yourself to be pulled by music that you love. Just let it pull you wherever it's going to pull you. And don't be afraid to ask questions. People that do stuff like Kronos does, we are incredibly happy to share whatever we know about what we do. We're incredibly happy to share that. We have gotten so much help from other people that part of our job is to be helpful to those that are interested. And so don't be afraid to come backstage, and if you're a composer, let me know about your music. If you're a performer, don't be afraid to come backstage and get to know us and strike up a relationship, a friendship, and maybe we can be helpful somehow.
Yeah. Well, one more life-changing moment for you, whether it's musical or maybe if it's a personal thing you want to share, that's fine, or anything. Life-changing moment.
Well, the most life-changing moment in my life was when my son died in April of 1995. And at that time, I lost all sound inside. And musicians have to have sound inside of them. It's what reverberates. It's what vibrates and allows their voice, their instrument, their inner music to continue. And so I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue. Oh. And it was only with the help of my family and friends and musicians from many places that I was able to kind of reassemble myself. It was and remains devastating. And so when I hear about wars that are continuing in Yemen and Somalia and Afghanistan and the threat that leaders are making of more violence, more wars, I know what it's like to lose a child, and it's the most devastating experience imaginable. Yeah. And that's all I can say.
Thank you for sharing that personal story. There's the last part of the program, which some of your fans have asked you questions when I told them you're going to be a guest, and you could give quick answers. You don't have to elaborate. But Christine Edwards says, how do you recommend getting a reluctant violinist to practice effectively?
Is this a parent by any chance?
It's a parent, and actually I know this person.
Well, look, practicing is something, to learn how to practice, it's tough to do. I didn't really learn how to practice until I was in my 20s. And I'm still working on how to practice more effectively. Practicing is change. If you're going to do something better on a violin, you have to change what you're doing. It's like my teacher, Vita Reynolds, she said, violin playing is about angles, and your body needs to make the correct angles.
Yeah.
And your ear needs to be really attuned and in charge of your body. Yeah. And how you teach yourself to do that, it doesn't always happen right away. And sometimes parents overvalue practicing. That's another thing that should be kept in mind, I think, because my grandson, for example, is 8 years old, and he has a really good piano lesson once a week.
Yeah.
And all the adults around wish he would practice a little bit more, but he's making progress.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay out of it. Just let him love music in the way he's going to love it. And if he, as a matter of fact, he said yesterday after his lesson, he said, I need to practice more. So he came to that himself, and it's always best to come to things yourself.
Yeah. One more question. Abby Barnes says, I'm a big fan and love what you have done for the world of music. Tell us something that we might not know about you, something you don't often speak about.
I try to listen to something every day that I've never heard before. That's just something. It's not only like an instrument maybe I've never heard. Maybe it's a form of music. Maybe it's a piece, but something that adds to my vocabulary and my palate.
Last question from one of your fans. Sam Watson says, I love the Kronos Quartet, have seen you perform more than 20 times, and I have two questions for you. Your favorite movie and your favorite food?
Well, I like, what I had during the run of Eli last week in Brooklyn, and I tend to have this at all of our recording sessions. It's pho.
Oh, yeah.
Pho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just love it. It's there's something very balanced for me. I always know I'm going to feel good after I have that.
Yeah.
So in terms of food, that's what I would say. Well, also, I mean, every morning I try to have oatmeal with maple syrup, walnuts, raspberries, and chia seeds and milk. For me, that's a really great way to start the morning.
Wow. And the movie?
The movie, wow, I'm not so good on knowing about movies. It's like I remember when my wife introduced me to The Day the Earth Stood Still, and after I heard that soundtrack, we ended up playing it. That was a great experience, and we're doing Dracula with Philip Glass pretty soon. I have a great time every time we get to do that, and we're doing The Green Fog, which was a film that we premiered the soundtrack to in San Francisco a few months ago. We're doing it in Vancouver next week.
Yeah.
So and here's a visual experience that we had recently on August 21st. We did we played before, during, and slightly after the eclipse. And I just wrote to the composer yesterday to see if we could do that on other concerts. So there might be this little short movie of the recent eclipse in some of our concerts.
Oh, wow. You will be performing south of Seattle in Federal Way at the New Performing Arts Center. And that's where my youth orchestra actually started rehearsals, and will be using the same concert hall for our performances for my youth orchestra. So I'm very excited you're performing there.
Oh, well, that's great. Do you live there still?
No, I actually live in Seattle, but my youth orchestra, I conduct a youth orchestra in the Federal Way Youth Symphony, and we rehearse and perform in the same concert hall you will be playing at in November, I believe, right?
Yes, it is. I think it's November 4th.
Yeah,
I think. Well, you should be in touch with our office, and maybe your orchestra can come to our sound check, or they can come to the concert or something.
All right.
We should meet them. I'd love that.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you so much for joining me. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk to you. I've been a longtime fan of what you do in the Kronos Quartet, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay.
Have a beautiful...
I hope to see you soon then.
I hope to see you too.